You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Guys, Fran Brown is a first-year head coach, not just at Syracuse, but ever in his life. He's a first-time head coach. And in his first college football season, he leads the Orange to a 9-3 record. Maybe it'll be a tomorrow or a Monday podcast whenever I decide to upload next, but we'll maybe dive a little bit deeper into Fran Brown. There's plenty of time to dive into the success that he had this season. But this is not an exaggeration when I tell you this. He might have just become the most successful first-year head coach in the history of the program. What do you think of that? This was a program-changing win. Heading into this season, maybe I'm a little bit repeating myself from the beginning of this podcast, and for that, I'm sorry. Honestly, my mind is kind of all over the place after that one. We talked about his recruiting and his transfer portal class. It was kind of turning around, right? But Fran Brown had never coached it down in his life. So my thing was always this. It's cool and all that you can recruit, and definitely that was something at Syracuse that had to be fixed. Their recruiting rankings under Dino Babers were not very good. Dino's a great person. I'm not trying to take a shot at him, but he couldn't really recruit well. And they needed someone who could. And that was Fran Brown, who, heading to Syracuse, was named the number one recruiter in the nation by 24/7 Sports. He was over at Georgia, and he was a terrific recruiter at Georgia. And he translated it to Syracuse. Did he get all of the 5 stars in the world? No. I mean, he didn't get like all the Georgia athletes and everything like that. But like I said earlier, his recruiting was at a 2-decade level high for Syracuse football. It was starting to become, okay, now they're not bottom of the barrel of the ACC in terms of talent. Maybe they're middle of the pack, which Rome is not built in a day. I'm not expecting Fran Brown to have the number one recruiting class in the conference in his first year. So already, terrific job. But he hadn't coached it down yet. So it's great that you can recruit, but can you actually coach? Can you build a winning team? Can you bring in all these new guys and have them gel and be a team? And he did. They went 9-3. He did it. That's why this is a program-changing game. Because Fran Brown already has proven he can recruit. And I'm sure, which signing day is coming up pretty soon, I think it's on Wednesday, that they're going to get some guys. Calvin Russell, a 5-star in 2026, a receiver, a monster, who I have a steak dinner bet with Brian Smith over at Locked On Seminoles. He's a college football recruiting expert. Told me there's like no chance that they can get a guy like Calvin Russell, a 5-star player. He was in the building tonight. His top 2 schools were Miami and Syracuse. So of course he's going to show up. You beat Miami, a top 10 team. You eliminate them from the ACC title game. You might have just eliminated them from the college football playoff. More on that in the squad episodes coming up if they deserve a spot in the playoff. But you might have just done that, and your team finished 9-3 in one season. It's a program-changing win. You get my drift now? Just unbelievable what he did. The perception of the program has changed. It has. You don't think of Syracuse football anymore on your schedule and say, that's a circled win. we're going to get our get-right game against Syracuse. Yep, we're going to beat the Orange. Nope, they're not. And think about it this way. We can talk about Kyle because it kind of relates to him. But if you're a quarterback, why wouldn't you want to come to Syracuse? You play in a dome, first of all. That helps. So there's no weather you got to deal with. I hope that Jeff Nixon remains the offensive coordinator, but he might have done such a terrific job this season. He might be a head coach somewhere next year. Or he might be an offensive coordinator at a super upper tier program if there's a job that's open. And more power to him, by the way. We talked about Jeff Nixon, the offensive coordinator, maybe being the head coach of Temple. Now, that was debunked by Fran Brown, but he might be able to aim a lot higher than that. But think about if you're a quarterback. I mean, look at what they just did with Kyle McCord. We look at him a whole lot differently than we did at this time last season. At this time last season, he was a quote-unquote bum. Not anymore. So if you're a quarterback, why wouldn't you want to come here and be developed? Play in a dome. And play with awesome weapons because they're going to get guys. You know they are. We got someone now. We got our guy. Our guy is Fran Brown. And we should rally behind him. He has proven it to me. Which is something that I didn't know if he'd be able to do in a year. I didn't know if he would. You can recruit. That's great. That's awesome. We needed help in that category. Can you coach? Can you manage a clock properly? Was there ever a time this season when Fran Brown did not manage the clock properly? Ever? I'm genuinely asking. If you have an example, leave a comment in the comment section below because I don't know. He was a terrific game manager. He had his players motivated. His teams, they bounced back every time they had adversity. Every time they had a crushing loss. They only had 3 of them this year, which is great. They lost to Stanford this season. They ripped off 4 straight after that. They lost to Boston College. They bounced back. They lose to Pitt. They bounce back. And I know I flipped that order, but you get the idea. And they finish 9-3. Program changing win.